So we had another question. This one is definitely a deep dive in the Bible here. So the Bible, in the book of Genesis, it refers to a group of people called the Nephilim. And it says that these Nephilim were the product of human women and demonic beings.
Well, it doesn't exactly say that.
Well, can you then explain who are the
implied in the
Nephilim?
question.
Who were the Nephilim? And tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, you're referring to Genesis chapter 6. And,
I am indeed.
At the time of the flood, or just before the flood, and it's actually a word that it is a word, Nephilim, and Nephilim or Nephilim. But I would say that let's look at the passage and then see if, when it comes to difficult passages of Scripture like this one, and this is a good question. And then, of course, what's the practical aspects? And to me, the practical aspects is that there is nefarious things going on in the atmosphere. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, principalities, powers. What can they do in this and that? Now, just before the flood, we know that it was so bad, men were so rebellious that, well, let's let the Scripture tell us about this. And listen carefully, and I'll try to emphasize some of the words which convey some of the questions that come out of this. So, for instance, chapter 6, verse 1, when man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives as they chose. When the sons of God were taking the daughters of men. So the first question is, who are these sons of God? You know, some people think they're angels because Job 38 talks about them. Angels calls them that. Some people think, no, it's just they're just human beings who were the righteous line of Adam and, you know, later Seth. But if that's the case, why is the next verse say, then the Lord said, my spirit shall not abide in man forever. And then this next line, for he is flesh. Why would God say that? Of course he's flesh. Or is he contrasting it with the sons of God thing? Okay. His days shall be 120 years, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men of old, men of renown. The Lord saw that wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man and was grieved in his heart and said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals, creeping things, birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I have made them. And then it says, Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Now, this is a daunting path. Something bad, we would all agree, wouldn't we? Something really bad is going on here. So to me, the argument that the sons of God were the godly line of Seth, I don't buy that, because everything after this is evil. I mean, God says, oh my goodness. You know. And he says, and he goes, how long am I going to put up with them? But they are flesh. I think there's something contrastive going on here. So this is where the argument comes that perhaps there was something demonic, supernatural going on here. And there are some, and I'm inclined to lean this way, without being dogmatic, that Satan, in his efforts to destroy the hope of man, tried to create, wait for it, an irredeemable race. Sort of a hybrid of something, you know, we would call demonic or evil and human. And then you would say, oh my where do you get, you're getting that out of the text itself? Well, no, I do have to, you do have to go beyond it. And I would hearken you to 2 Peter or Jude. 2 Peter first. 2 Peter makes a really intriguing statement. It's talking about false teachers, false prophets. And they're going to be among us, and they're going to lead people astray. And then he likens these false teachers that are going to come into the future and do what they do. And this is 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 4, where it says, "For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them into chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until judgment." In other words, whatever these angels did, they ain't getting out. They're not nipping at our behinds right now, okay? They're in a place they're not getting. They're in Tartarus. It's the place where you don't get out. It's a recess of hell that only the worst of the worst go. But look what he goes, "If he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly." And then he goes on, he says, if by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes and condemn them to extinction, making them an example of what's going to happen to the ungodly, but rescued Lot, he goes on, God's going to do this. So he's drawing an analogy to that time and didn't spare the angels. So we know from Peter that the angels here are not, don't think good angels, think bad angels. Remember, demons are angels, they're just evil angels, okay? So we know from this passage that whatever these angels did, whatever nefarious stuff they were up to, was enough to put them in the recesses of hell forever. And he connects it to Noah. Very interesting. And then in Jude, who is talking about apostates, he says something very similar. He says, "Now I want to remind you of what you should fully know. Once you once fully knew it, that Jesus, who saved us, saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. And the angels," again, "who did not stay within their own," look at this, "who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of that day. Just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example of going to a punishment of eternal fire." So it's putting these two passages together, Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 7, and 2 Peter 2, and
Genesis 6, 4 through 7.
Thank you. Did I say Deuteronomy?
Yeah.
Thank you. Genesis 6 and 2 Peter and Jude, you have to composite them, granted, and that's how you get that argument. Now, there's an argument, and I think it's in that argument of, well, how can that be? Because angels, Jesus said something about Matthew chapter 18. What was that?
There's kind of a sub-question underneath that question that says, well, how did these angels form, these almost superhuman, men of renown with women? Do angels have gender? Are they male? Are they female? This would indicate that they're male and they're, having sexual relations with the women in that passage. And so if that's the case, does that mean that in the New Testament, when Jesus says that there's not going to be marriage in heaven, but we will be like the angels, does that mean we're all going to be male, or how does that work?
Okay, so first to the question, in keeping with the issue of getting down to brass tacks, can angels copulate with humans? That's the question here, okay? And so I would say, I don't know. I mean, there's no indication of that end or warning of that, but we got a lot of warning against demons. But the passage you're talking about, there is one little phrase that takes out the question. What do you mean? I mean, this can't happen. People say this can't happen because we're told by Jesus in Matthew 18, they don't marry, they're not given in marriage, but are like, well, let's look what it says in verse 30 of chapter 18. For in the resurrection, angels neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. Okay? So there's a qualifier there. Angels in heaven are fixed, so to speak. That's poor choice of words. Poor choice of words. But I mean, they're fixed in a state of they're not reproducing, and we have no knowledge that angels ever could reproduce. But so there is a distinction here in that passage. The angels in heaven. So I don't think you can really use that for this argument. So at the end of the day, I think the Nephilim, I think Satan was trying to create some kind of irredeemable race. Otherwise, why would God say, I'm wiping the whole place out and I'm starting over with another family?
Now, did the Nephilim exist at all after the flood? I mean, it talks about them being men of renown or whatever, and I think there's a phrase that says, and afterward, too. Some people speculate that maybe giants in the Old Testament, for example, Goliath, was maybe one of these Nephilim. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Probably not, because you got to remember, either that or you have to argue it from the genetics of Noah and his wife, because Noah and his wife basically became the new Adam and Eve in this world, so to speak. I mean, so all these Nephilim, they didn't survive the flood. I mean, God wiped them all out. But there was a genetic race that was enormous. I mean, and because not only Goliath, but if you'll recall later in David's fight, there were those that were relatives of Goliath, and there was a whole line of big people, Yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks for answering that question and helping us understand that a little bit better.
You're welcome.